myself, geez, I, of all people, from one ideology to another, always switching sides like a faggot. I think a really big change for me, as for anyone else who struggled with the same or similar issue, is realizing that the shell I put myself in was really limiting. My approach to theism, to religion, to that sort of thing, it wasn't ideal. I want to ask a really important question. One's answer to such a question, I believe, really determines a lot about their character. It says so much, practically screams it. Do you believe that you have any control over what is right and wrong, over correct and incorrect? Do you believe that by believing in something a new moral has been set? Or do you believe that the truth, whatever truth may be, is outside of your grasp? That one cannot change it, but can only find it. That one could even be wrong about the truth, but the truth as the truth still remains. I find the lowest belief an individual can hold also being the worst single quality, single trait in a human being that anyone can possibly possess, to be the belief that one can just determine reality, that they can make the truth up on their own, that truth exists inside of them, as opposed to being external to them. Something they need to search for, to find, to attempt to clutch. In the realm of what I'll dub extreme individualism, there is this notion, whether it's solipsist or materialist, that one is the self-evident bearer of truth, that what they say because they say it. Because they adhere it to, it is automatically true. The worst trait in any person is, quite simply put, the inability to accept that something, whatever its nature, is a certain way, that it's not the way they want. Similar to how a sore loser can't just accept that they lost at a game, some sort of sports or competitive activity, and find themselves attempting to make excuses. Someone cheated, it wasn't fair, it must be rigged. I didn't have enough time to prepare, etc. People who believe they create truth, or that a truth which doesn't conform to their desired reality is just not true, are beyond the realm of typical cultists. While those within cults, or even gangs, or those who hold surreal spiritual beliefs, at least arrived at such destinations because of a belief in something higher than themselves. Those who are unwilling to accept truth as truth are, instead, just plain narcissists. A common characteristic of people who not only don't adhere to any religion, don't believe in any God, and are usually materialists, but also decidedly degrade the idea of religion, viewing it as foolish, is the characteristic of inward truth. They think that because they believe something, that's the final word. They also believe that just because something doesn't make sense to them, especially if it doesn't immediately, then it's inherently invalid. You see, there's this old joke that theists tell in an attempt to criticize atheists. Basically, it states that, by definition of what they are, atheists don't believe in God, but as a correlation. A lot of them also hate God. They then say, so which is it? It's meant to be this jab at the way those who reject religion and theism tend to behave. However, I think it's a pretty poor joke. In fact, it's bizarre, because it seems that from where it was going, where it was leading, it was going to have a different punchline. At least that's what I thought. There's no actual contradiction, at least not the particular contradiction those making the joke think exists. Atheists don't believe in God, but the hypothetical God that certain ideologies promote, most commonly the Abrahamic God, but really it can refer to any deity anyone worships, is, in their mind, an immoral God. A cruel God, a God they wish didn't exist, even if he were to. It's kind of like how no adults believe in the idea of Santa, but still find the concept creepy, like the idea that some old fat dude has illegally entered into your house and is lurking in the living room, rather unsettling. However, there is still a contradiction, a much, much more serious one, that implies a lot of wrongness and misfound self-righteousness on the part of these atheists. And of course, it needs to be stated that not everyone who doesn't believe in any God thinks this way, but you never hear people call out this behavior. In fact, even theists rarely ever do. I suppose it's a trait in certain people so dark, so insidious in nature, that it just flies over most people's heads. So they're unaware of it. Perhaps it's because it's so commonplace. That's why no one takes notice. The real contradiction in this thought, the thought that denies the existence of God, but would still hate God if they were forced to acknowledge his existence, is that it's this self-made morality, this sentiment that somehow the most powerful being and creator of the entire universe. Every universe that's been created is somehow not the one to know better than themselves. They actually think, and with conviction too, that God's determined reality is not the reality that should be, that God somehow doesn't have the ability to make things right and wrong. Isn't the deciding factor for whether something is ethical or unethical. They quite literally believe they have more say over God, or that God isn't the supreme decider of logic, the one who knows everything in existence, and who is best determined to guide the path for all people. They think they should be God. They believe their logic is flawless, that because they believe that certain things are halal, that they shouldn't be haram, their so-called logic is more powerful than that of God's. The truth being told, honestly, this issue, this sort of mentality, isn't limited just to theism-themed topics. In fact, it's not limited to a small set of subjects, it's actually sort of a universal problem. The conflict between so many individuals and collectives, not merely leftists and rightists, but everything within, from socialists arguing with capitalists, from anarchists arguing with statists, from all other unnamed ideological disputes that never resolve, because no one's willing to have the guts to admit they were wrong, is a continual result of people believing that truth can't be caught, can't be found, that it doesn't possess the objective quality it does. They brewed up this delusion that someone is morally despicable because they simply viewed the equivalent to a math equation incorrectly. Just as 2 plus 2 equals 4, simply believing that it doesn't, on the basis that there's some logic unseen that generates an alternative outcome, is not an unethical stance. It doesn't say anything about the quality of a person's character, and it's not the same as the trait that states that logic and truth are subjective and or individually determined. One might say that it makes them look very stupid, believing that 2 plus 2 doesn't equal 4. I mean, someone's got to be at least somewhat eccentric to hold that viewpoint. However, if you told me for a fact, and I knew it for a fact, that 2 plus 2 actually equaled 5, I wouldn't be able to argue. I'd have to accept that it really does equal 5. If there was some sign, some emission from the universe, a message that definitively confirmed that it equaled 5, even though no explanation was provided, it still would equal 5. I wouldn't argue against it. I would just have to swallow my pride. If there was some deity, some powerful being, who told me that my understanding of mathematics was all wrong, that certain equations had different outcomes, I would know this truth isn't up for me to decide. In fact, no truth is up for me to decide. The very nature of mathematics is already a monumental testament to this. The outcome of an equation, what a certain set of numbers equal, isn't up to one's desires, their ideal scenario. It is independent of want, something objective and unchanging. In other words, the truth is the truth. You can either accept that an equation equals what it does, or just carry on and behave immaturely. It's your choice. You have free will after all.